Good morning, seventh graders. Halfway through your last full week of school. It's kind of exciting. Kind of our last big thing that we're going to talk about here before we kind of finish out the year to make sure that you guys have that down before you jump off to summer and then into your eighth grade year. Um, is we're going to talk about inequalities today. So I'm going to go through some of those notes with you just so we make sure we have that down. Again, this is stuff that maybe you've seen before, but if you haven't, we want to make sure we go over that stuff. So inequalities, right? An inequality is comparing two things, usually numbers, right, that are not equal. So there are a few different inequalities. We're going to go over four different ones today, and that is the less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to type of things. So here, when we use the symbol less than, right, that's this type of symbol here, the green one. It is kind of pointing to the left in a sense. Greater than is pointing to the right. If we add the words or equal to, that means it could possibly be equal to. We put a line underneath that, and that means also it could be equal to that number, right? Now, some of these, the less than or greater than, those can be a little bit tough to remember that direction, right? To memorize that direction. It's not terrible, but it can make it a little more difficult. So what I do to kind of remember that, what a lot of people do, I think about it like the Pac-Man, or some people call it the alligator method on here, is that we kind of think of this symbol. Notice here is the greater than symbol from this one, but we imagine like there's a big Pac-Man around here, and Pac-Man always wants to eat the larger number, right? It wants to eat the larger one, or in other words, it might want to point at the smaller number, right? So that's how we would know what direction to place something. Okay, so I don't have to remember if it's greater than or less than, or what type of symbol to use. I just have to remember, oh yeah, I should point the larger side at the larger number, the smaller side at the smaller number. And so a couple examples of those. I'm just going to throw a few examples down here, right? So if we wanted to compare 25 and 98, I know that 98 is larger than 25, and it's not equal to necessarily. So I could use actually either one of these two symbols. I could grab this green one here and I could put that in place, right? Because that would be true. And 98 is larger than 25, or 25 smaller than 98. Notice I've pointed the larger side at 98. That would be perfectly fine. I could also use this blue one here too. That would be perfectly fine also, because even though it's not equal to, the word we read here is that it is less than or equal to. So it would still work, right? Either one of those would. And so I'm going to go along here and kind of fill these in. Again, this one here, 823, is the larger number. So I want to pick something that shows that it is larger than 823. So I put that one there. And then this one here, oh man, decimal values, but that's okay. 28 is the larger value. So I just have to pick one so that 28 is larger. Now I could have picked this yellow one as well to go here. Would have been perfectly fine. But I chose the red one just because I wanted to. And now on these ones, 68 is actually equal to 68, which we could put in there, right? I could put an equal sign. That would be okay to do. But if I want to use an inequality, I can't use the green or the yellow ones. It would be possible, though. I could put this red one here. That would be okay because it says it's or equal to. That's what that bottom line means. So I could do that, right? Same with these ones here. I could put a red one here on these 45s. 45 is less than or equal to 45, right? That is entirely possible. But I could also put this blue one here as well. That would be perfectly fine as well. I could put this blue one here because the bottom line means or equal to. So that's kind of the basics with those inequalities, how we use them to compare something. And the last thing we're going to go over today is how do we graph inequalities on a number line, or how do we plot those inequalities? And so that's where we change kind of a symbol into like, plotting some stuff on a number line. So how we kind of go over this, if we use a less than or a greater than symbol, there's no line underneath. We use what's called an open circle. In other words, we do not fill in the circle. Okay? If it's not equal to, we don't fill it in. We only color in stuff that's equal to. And so here, if it's or equal to, then we color in the circle. And that's what that stuff means. So in here, I'm going to show a few examples of how we would graph that stuff. I know this is a little abstract right now because we don't have an example to see. So here I'm going to look at this. Okay, here we're going to put a variable in here. We're looking at stuff, n, our numbers that are less than 8. Okay, so how we would do this here, n less than 8. I know it's less than, so I would use an open circle because, again, less than or even greater than would use an open circle. And so we want this, at 8. So I'm going to put a spot at 8. I'm going to put an open circle there. I'm going to include 8. You don't have to include the number. It's just my circle's big enough to put that there. And now we want this stuff that is less than 8. So we put our circle down, and we want this arrow to point at things that are less than 8. So if I just put the arrow this way, this is pointing at stuff that's bigger than 8. I want it to point at stuff that is smaller than 8. Notice it's trying to, it's here 8 is the largest number. So here this would not work. So I'd have to take this, say, okay, I better change it this way. So now it is pointing at stuff that is smaller than 8. So here is a graphical representation of our number stuff. So it's less than 8 in this case. All right, let's take a look at the next example. So I'm going to go through just a few more examples. If this is making sense to you and you want to jump onto the Google form, you can do that right now. And I'm just going to put a few more down just in case they're not quite making sense. So here we have stuff is greater than or equal to 3. So since we can be equal to, I want to use a filled in circle. And so I'm going to put that on the 3 because it can be filled in. Okay, that's what we want to do. It can be equal to it, so we color it in. And if we want the stuff that is larger than 3, things that are larger than 3 are going to be here to the right. So I would grab my arrow and make sure that it points to the right here, which it already does. I don't have to change that. I'm picking stuff, my numbers that are larger than 3, so that'd be over here. All right, 2 more examples to kind of go through on here. This one's a little more tough. So to start with, it's not too bad, right? We have a 6. There's an underline on that. So I would use my filled in circle here because it can possibly be equal to 6. So we fill it in. Now I have to be careful. Some people would look at this and say, oh, hey, this is the same symbol as we had. As we kind of had same direction as we had here on this one. So I should make this thing point the same way, right? I should probably click on this and make it point this way. And that would be fine, right? I could go this direction. But there's a little bit of a situation here. We want to read this very carefully. We want the stuff to be larger than 6. Notice it's pointing at 6, meaning 6 is the smallest item. If I look at this, this is pointing at things that are smaller than 6. Oh, that's not what we want. We want our numbers to be larger than 6. Notice the number spot has the larger piece towards it. So I want to pick this stuff that is actually larger than 6. So I should actually put it this direction. So sometimes we have to think about, where's that placed? It doesn't mean it's bigger or smaller on there. So I want to be real careful on that. And same with this one here. Again, or equal to. So I'm going to use my filled in circle, put it at the 2. And that part's pretty easy. That part's not too bad. But now I want to read this. I want the stuff, the numbers, and notice it's pointing at the numbers. So the numbers are smaller than 2. 2 is greater than all the numbers. So when I put this in here, I want it to point. 2 should be the largest thing. This is pointing at stuff that's bigger than 2. Nope. I want 2 to be bigger than all the numbers that I'm pointing at. So I should point this at all the stuff that is smaller than 2. So there would be my graph. I want to point at stuff that's smaller than 2. Yeah, so it can be a little tough to think about those, but not too bad. And again, if you guys have questions on that stuff as you're hopping through things, make sure to send me a message or something like that, or even if you just want to say hello, that's okay too. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good rest of the day and maybe even rest of the week. But I will see you guys later.